They wasn't just, you know, it shouldn't be no groups in Israel. When I was on the street the other day, I did a couple videos about groups in Israel. There's only one group in Israel. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, if you want to be divided into groups, you already divided into 12 tribes. That's enough division in our nation as it is. Because you got the tribes that be beefing with one another, let alone different groups. All right. It goes on to say this. They rejected, talking about the Sadducees, they rejected Pharisaic tradition, which represented an older legal and religious standpoint. The Sadducees did not believe in a resurrection or in any personal immortality, and they denied angels and spirits. Sadduceeism is denounced by Yahushua the Christ in the phrase, beware of the leaven, that is the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. The Sadducees disappeared with the fall of the Jewish state in 70 AD. All right. Now I'm going to read to you about the Essenes. All right. I know this is a little tedious or whatever, but, you know, I just want to make sure brothers have an understanding of these groups or whatever, you know. It's all for the edification. The Essenes, it says this: members of a Jewish religious brotherhood organized on a communal basis and practicing strict asceticism. The order, with about 4,000 members, existed in Palestine and Syria from the 2nd century BC to the 2nd century AD. Its chief settlements were on the shores of the Dead Sea. The Essenes are not mentioned in the Bible or in rabbinical literature, and information regarding them is largely confined to the writings of Philo Judaeus, a Hellenistic Jewish scholar and philosopher of Alexandria, the Roman historian Pliny the Elder, and the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. So those are the three men to which, you know, you would know that this group existed because of their writings. It goes on to say this: various groups have been set forth as possible prototypes for an Essenian order. Chief among these groups are Sinean, the modest or chaste ones, Hashayim, the silent ones, Hasidim, Harishonim, the ancient saints or elders, Nigayi had Da'ath, the pure mind, the Watakim, the men of exactitude. All right, those are, so I guess those are splinter groups that scholars believe came out of the Essenes. It goes on to say this: each of these words was characteristics of the order, the fundamental teachings of which were love of God, love of virtue, and the love of one's fellow humans. Important features of the organization were community and property, distributed according to the need, strict observance of the Sabbath, and scrupulous cleanliness, which involved washing in cold water and wearing white garments. Prohibited were swearing, taking oaths other than oaths of membership to the Essenian order. Animal sacrifice was prohibited. The making of weapons and participation in trade and commerce was prohibited. The order drew its recruits either from children it had adopted or from the ranks of those who had renounced material things. A probation of 3 years was required before the novice could take the oath of full membership, which demanded complete obedience and secrecy. Breaking the oath was punishable by expulsion. Because of the continuance of the binding requirement that no food should be eaten that was ceremonially unclean, this penalty was often equivalent to death by starvation. As a society, the Essenes were the first to condemn slavery as a violation of human fellowship. It is reported that they bought and freed slaves owned by others. The Essenes lived in small communities of their own. Their industries were farming and handcrafts. It goes on to say this: after 1947, new light was thrown on the Essenes by certain ancient Hebrew scrolls discovered near the Dead Sea at Khirbet Qumran, or Qumran, the site of an Essene community of the 1st century AD. Alright, so that Khirbet Qumran was the site of an Essene community. It says this: among the scrolls is a manual of discipline which delineates an Essene pattern of life as known from Greek and Latin sources. Alright, because you know, according to the scriptures, we were speaking Hebrew, Greek, and Latin about that time. Now this is the discourse out of the encyclopedia on the Zealots. It says this. Zealots, Jewish religious political faction known for its fanatical resistance to Roman rule in Judea during the 1st century AD. The Zealots emerged as a distinct political group during the reign of Herod the Great, which was from 37 BC to 4 BC. It says this. In AD 6, when Judea was put under direct Roman rule of the authorities ordered, and Salaki, let me read that again. In AD 6, when Judea was put under direct Roman rule and the authorities ordered a census for purposes of taxation, all right, and you know that's true pursuant to the scripture, when Joseph, Yahushua's father, went to go pay that tax, when Caesar put out a decree that the whole world was to be taxed. It goes on to say this. The Zealots, led by Judas of Galilee, called for rebellion. Acknowledging the authority of the pagan Roman emperor, they argue, would mean repudiating the authority of the Most High and submitting to slavery. An extremist group of Zealots called Sakari, all right, so the Sakari was another group, dagger men, all right, Sakari, they were called Sakari because of the name of the dagger that they carry. I think it was called a Sikari. It was a little small knife that they carried, so that's why people called them the Sakari. Adopted terrorist tactics, assassinating Romans, and also some prominent Jews who favored cooperation with Roman authority. The rebellion led by Zealots in 6 AD was quickly put down, and many of them, probably including Judas of Galilee, were killed. But others continued to advocate uncompromising resistance to the Romans. One of Yahushua's disciples, Simon, was a Zealot. According to Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian, the Zealots played a major role in inciting and sustaining the general Jewish uprising against the Romans that began in 66 AD. Although they continued to attack other Jewish groups, they fought bravely in defense of Jerusalem until its fall in 70 AD. Because along with the Zealots, you had a lot of splinter groups in Israel when we were being sieged by the Romans, fighting amongst themselves and infighting. Different guys was leading different groups, and they was fighting like their own civil war, while the Romans was outside of our gates, besieging the place. That's one of the reasons why we weren't able to hold the Romans off, because we was fighting amongst ourselves. It goes on to say this about the Zealots. Although they continued to attack other Jewish groups, they fought bravely in defense of Jerusalem until its fall in 70 AD. Another group of Zealots held the fortress of Masada against besieging Roman troops until 73 AD, when they committed suicide rather than surrender. Alright, so that was the discourse on the Zealots. Now, go back to the Josephus really quick and read a little more about these groups for you. I'm going to also read a little bit about the Epicureans. Looking for a certain page in this Josephus. Alright, it says this, and here he gives more detail about the Essenes. This is Josephus, book Wars of the Jews, book 2, chapter 8.